On July 21, 1951, Robin Williams was born in Chicago at St. Luke's Hospital. His life appeared to be ideal on the surface. His mother, Lori Williams, was a fashion model, and his father, Robert Williams, was a top executive at Ford Motor Company. They had plenty of money, a large home, and every luxury a child could want. However, Robin's environment was chilly. His mother, who was attractive but aloof, kept things official rather than informal, while his father was constantly on the road for work. There were few hugs. One had to earn love. Robin soon discovered that he needed to perform if he wanted attention, be impressive and humorous. Being himself was insufficient. He would never forget that lesson. The family moved into a 40-room home in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, when the child was 12 years old. It was enormous, opulent, and incredibly solitary. Robin was left alone for hours or even days with only the staff to keep him company because his mother was occupied with social engagements and his father was at work. He didn't just sit around moping, though. He brought voices into the quiet. In front of the mirror, he would mimic family members, make up characters, converse with imaginary companions, and create whole worlds. He turned the house into a private theater. Each chamber served as a stage, each echo a joke. Robin was inside entertaining ghosts, while the majority of children were playing outside. In that quiet mansion, where no one could tell him what was amusing or not, his comedy began. School was no way out, but he worked it out on his own. Robin didn't fit in. She was short, fat, and had glasses. His life was ruined by bullies. They assaulted him, stole from him, and made fun of him. He had returned home with his pride hurt and his garments torn. Then something was different. He observed that they retreated if he made them laugh. He leaned into it as they ceased hitting. He had authority after a brief jest here and an impression there. He used laughter as a shield. It provided him authority in addition to protection. He felt safer the more he made others laugh. He also depended more on his humor, the more it was lauded. It became the only version of himself that he could display. Robin's funny bones were inherited from his mother, as well as from trauma. Lori Williams was quick-witted, had witty one-liners, and could end a discussion with a single sardonic look. He committed her pauses, rhythms, and ability to make others laugh without ever raising her voice to memory. However, he also noticed a darker aspect. Only when he was performing did his mother appear to light up. Robin's smile vanished if he stopped being hilarious. He therefore learned how to maintain the show. Know your audience at all times. Examine the space. Be the person you want to be recognized for. It was a talent that would make him famous and make him fearful of quiet. Everything changed when he turned 16. Robin enrolled at Redwood High School after the family relocated to Tiburon, California. He met James Dunn, a theatrical teacher, there. Dunn saw raw talent, something no one else possessed. After years of practicing self-defense, Robin entered the acting department and came to life right away. His personalities and voices weren't strange here, they were praised. At last he was able to transform the turmoil in his mind into something tangible. His reign astounded his classmates. He would go from being a quiet British butler to a boisterous New Yorker in an instant. Each prompt became a solo performance. Robin felt less alone for the first time. He sensed being seen. By his senior year, he had evolved from a member of the theatrical club to its leader and was prepared for a more ambitious role. Robin made a bold move in 1973 when he was accepted to Juilliard, one of the world's most prestigious art schools. That year, he was one of just 2 students accepted into their prestigious acting program. Christopher Reeve the other. However, there was a cost to the status. Shakespeare, breathing exercises, stage discipline, and rigorous classical acting were all taught at Juilliard. Robin was a tornado of thoughts and whims. He refused to abide with the regulations. He desired to tear them to shreds. He burst into improv while others recited monologues. Despite admiring his talent, the school was unsure on how to handle him. 3 years later, he had had enough. He dropped out in 1976. It was shocking to learn that leaving Juilliard was equivalent to leaving the Olympics in the middle. However, Robin claimed that remaining would have destroyed his soul. Freedom, not tradition, was what he needed. He jumped right into stand-up comedy when he returned to California. He gave performances at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles and the Holy City Zoo in San Francisco. He had an electrifying style. He embodied the jokes instead of merely telling them. There was a Russian taxi driver 1 minute. The next was an alien who loved disco. He would switch between voices so quickly that it seemed like 10 persons were traveling in one body. Instead than merely laughing, audiences leaned forward and were really focused. Comics such as Richard Pryor and George Carlin took note. Pryor even took on the role of mentor. Robin was a storm, not just good. People's faces ached from laughing when they left his shows. What others couldn't do in an hour, he could do in 10. He relocated to Los Angeles by 1977. He began doing frequent performances at Sunset Strip's Comedy Store. TV producers sought out fresh talent there. Gary Marshall discovered him there. Marshall had already produced successful television programs, such as Happy Days. When he saw Robin perform one evening, he realized right away that this man was more than just a comedian. He cast him because he was unique. Robin Williams' quick ascent started with what appeared to be a last-ditch artistic choice on Happy Days. After watching Star Wars in 1977, Scott, the 8-year-old son of producer Gary Marshall, proposed incorporating a spaceman into the program. The authors detested it. To choose who would script the dumb alien episode, they even drew straws. However, that strange notion turned into my favorite Orkin on February 28, 1978. Richie Cunningham was only meant to have a dream sequence. Then Robin Williams entered to try out. He sat on his back when instructed to do so. According to Marshall, he was the only alien to try out. TV history was altered by just one moment. The audience went wild. ABC re-edited the episode to remove the dream portion and make it more realistic due to the tremendous response. A whole spin-off resulted from a single appearance. Mork and it burst, but no one saw it coming. Mork and Mindy became a national fixation after their September 14, 1978, premiere. It drew 60 million viewers each week for the first season alone. Was after Happy Days, the third most watched program in America. Overnight, Robin Williams rose to fame. For someone who was essentially a one-man comedy storm, he was a steal at only $15,000 per episode. His face appeared on Time's cover in March 1979. Children had toys, coloring books, lunchboxes, and Mork t-shirts on. Mork was everywhere. However, the authors were in survival mode behind the laughter. It was thought that Robin had made up his lines on the moment. The writers were enraged by the myth. "We're up until 4 in the morning, penning Robin's ad-libs." One of them joked. "They put in a lot of labor. To keep up with him, I had to stay up until 4 o'clock at night." Cocaine was used by some. Sugar was the lifeblood of others, such as David Mish. Robin did not improvise. After reading the entire screenplay once, he committed it to memory. When the cameras rolled, he hit every line, even though he was wild during rehearsals. Exactly. He was exact in his pandemonium. Hollywood was unable to overlook him. Williams landed his first major motion picture role in Popeye in 1980, with a budget of $20 million. It was shot in Malta, where a whole hamlet was constructed, and is now a popular tourist destination. Despite earning close to $50 million, the film was a box office failure. Williams made fun of the challenging shoot by calling the set Stalag Altman. However, it demonstrated that he could carry a film. He had star power even if the director or screenplay didn't work out for him. Despite not becoming a hit, Popeye helped him land the parts that shaped his career: Mrs. Doubtfire, The Dead Poets Society, and Good Will Hunting. But even as his career took off, he was being tormented by something worse. Williams was using 1 gram of cocaine every 2 days throughout the Mork and Mindy years. In 1991, he even told a doctor about it, but the doctor dismissed it because drug usage was so common in Hollywood. However, friends noticed the harm. When Robin noticed a gram in his pocket in the early 1980s, comedian Mike Binder recalled the incident, requested a hit, vanished into the restroom, and returned with the vial drained. He needed several minutes. Others recalled him pleading prior to performances, "Have you been hit? Without that, I can't continue." However, cocaine didn't excite him like it does most users. It made him feel better. "Coca-Cola makes most individuals euphoric. It slowed me down," he added. Cocaine served as a hiding place for him. Then came the shock that made all the difference. John Belushi passed away from a speedball overdose on March 5, 1982. The previous evening, Robin had spent time with him at the Chateau Marmont. Belushi, who was high on Quaaludes and playing a guitar, appeared exhausted. After returning home, Robin informed his wife that he was seeing this woman. She was fearsome and strong. The mixture that murdered Belushi would be injected by that woman, Kathy Smith. On the set of Mork and Mindy the following day, Robin learned. He was taken aback. "What? Spent last night with him." Repeated. Hollywood was shocked by Belushi's passing. It was terrifying for Robin. "You weak little motherfucker, look at yourself. Your little change," he told himself. He might have been that person. Had he not stopped, that would have been him. Then came parenting, the last push. Zachary, Robin's son, was born in April 1983. Williams had given up booze and cocaine completely 6 months beforehand. Just sheer willpower. No treatment, no rehab, no Betty Ford. According to a buddy, he simply quit. Later he gave a horrifying explanation. "And there was the impending baby for me. I realized I couldn't have that kind of life and be a father." Mork and Mindy were done by then. His companion had passed away. He was going to be a father. Everything indicated a turning point. Most fell. Williams made the decision to become clean and remain sober for 20 years. He didn't touch drugs or alcohol between 1983 and 2003. He put all of that addictive energy into his work instead. He rose to become one of the world's most adored actors. Movies such as Mrs. Doubtfire, Patch Adam, Good Will Hunting, Aladdin, and Dead Poets Society. They were more than just films. They served as people's lifelines. It kept him clean, but he was a workaholic. Cycling became another outlet for him. He said, "It saved my life." For peace of mind, he rode his bike rather than hiding in narcotics. But pressure accompanied that level of intensity. The audience anticipated that Robin would always be on. "You're only allowed to be sad in private," he once stated in an interview. "Anybody gets caught up in that kind of life." The public finally witnessed his true abilities in 1987. Performed as a military radio DJ on Good Morning Vietnam that year. It was more than noise and jokes. He made you laugh heartily before delivering a gut punch of war's agony. Most of his spontaneous broadcast tirades were unplanned. He was simply let go by the director. The outcome, a movie with a $13 million budget that brought in $123.9 million worldwide. He was also nominated for an Oscar for the first time in his career. He went even further 2 years later. He became Mr. Keating in Dead Poets Society, an English teacher who made poetry more than just a subject, whispering carpe diem while standing on desks and quoting Thoreau and Whitman. This was something different than stand-up Robin. He learned how actual teachers operate for weeks and committed more than 200 lines of poetry to memory. The movie earned him his second Oscar nomination and brought in $235.9 million. More significantly though, it made him a symbol for educators, idealists, and anybody who ever aspired to liberation. Then 1992 arrived. His voice trembled even though he wasn't on television. The entire globe, 30 hours of frantic creativity, impressions, improvisations and energy that no animator could have foreseen were captured while playing the genie in Aladdin. The movie transformed animation forever and earned over $504.1 million. Subsequently, Studios sought behind-the-scenes talent in addition to voices. Williams was enraged. He had consented to perform the job for only $75,000, which was significantly less than his typical rate, provided that there was no extensive merchandising. Disney betrayed that pledge. One of their main sources of income was the genie, generating more than $1 billion by 1995. Williams never forgot it either. He wore a frock, a wig, and a thick British accent in 1993. At the box office, Mrs. Doubtfire also caused a huge uproar, $441.5 million globally, making it the year's second biggest film. To become Euphigenia Doubtfire, Williams spent 4.5 hours a day in a makeup chair. He changed, not only acted. He took voice lessons, improvised repeatedly, and studied elderly ladies in shopping centers. Because he was always coming up with new lines on the spot, one dinner scenario required 15 attempts. It was more than just amusing. It was latex and laughter encased in love, grief, motherhood, and suffering. However, nothing was more devastating than Good Will Hunting. He portrayed Sean Maguire, a gentle bereaved therapist who helped a lost genius in 1997. There were no sounds, no fireworks, only silence. The crowd was broken by the impromptu "it's not your fault" scene. It broke Matt Damon on the set. Williams wasn't simply nominated this time. Finally, on March 23, 1998, he received an Oscar. He answered, "Thank you, Ben and Matt, I still want to see some ID," and left the stage. He was at the top of his game, but in 2003, while filming in a remote area of Alaska, he broke down in a state of isolation and fear. He explained it like that. "You could see it from there," he claimed, "but it wasn't the edge of the earth." He entered a store, saw a bottle of Jack Daniels, and his lower power murmured a taste. 20 years of sobriety were ruined by that one drink. Since 1982, he had remained clean. It was gone now. 3 years of drinking in secret ensued. He continued to perform and work, but on the inside, he was spinning. He later claimed that within the first week, he knew it was horrible. He made a joke. Not at all. Claimed that those 3 years were completely miserable. Simply couldn't stop. His family finally stepped in 2006. Williams spent 2 months at Hazelden, a renowned rehabilitation center in Oregon, confronted the truth, and recommitted to attending weekly AA meetings, according to his son Zach. Acknowledged that his initial recuperation in the 1980s was not complete. He responded, "That was the one thing I hadn't dealt with." However, the costs were driving him to divorces even as he battled for sobriety. Large communities. According to some estimates, he lost between $20 and $30 million. Valerie Velarde, his first wife, received $50,000 per month for the rest of her life. She collected more than $500,000 in 1989 alone. Even worse was his second divorce. 2 years after his time in recovery, Marcia Garces left him in 2008. She mentioned his addiction stress. Williams made an effort to laugh despite his discomfort. He once claimed that the word alimony is Latin in origin and means to tear a man's genitalia out of his wallet. The funds eventually ran out. He listed his 53-acre, 6-month Napa Valley estate in 2012, $35 million for Villa Soriso. It had a wine cellar, a theater, a library, and an art gallery, but it had to go. "I simply can no longer afford it." Despite having made over $130 million in his career, he told Parade magazine that he was cutting back to make ends meet. He remained one of the world's most hilarious individuals. However, Robin Williams almost passed away in March 2009. At the age of 57, he experienced dyspnea during his comedy tour, Weapons of Self-Destruction. It was more than fatigue. His heart was discovered by doctors, was not working. Have to have open heart surgery, things that may have been fatal. In addition to replacing his aortic valve, the surgeons attempted to correct his erratic pulse by repairing his mitral valve. In order to protect his brain, this required stopping his heart, administering anesthetic, and even cooling his body. It was that serious. Similar surgery had killed his brother 2 years prior. He carried that fear with him. Although the operation was successful, there were invisible scars left behind. These operations frequently result in PTSD or depression. Trauma, anesthesia, or small clots in the brain might induce memory loss or cognitive abnormalities in certain patients. Although he lived, Williams never recovered. He attempted to resume his TV career 4 years later with The Crazy Ones, a sitcom. In 2013, it launched with great success. The advertisements were omnipresent, and he co-starred with Sarah Michelle Gellar. However, the magic was short-lived. Williams was severely impacted by the show's decline in ratings, which led to its cancellation in May 2014 after just 22 episodes. He thought he had failed. Behind the scenes, he told a pal, "My face is all over town on billboards, and it's all on my back." After 2 divorces and the show's cancellation, he was already struggling financially. He had to sell his $29.9 million Napa ranch, which left him heartbroken, humiliated, and uncertain about whether he would still have any roles. His confidence was rapidly eroding, and on the set of The Night at the Museum's Secret of the Tomb, things got worse when Robin began to forget his lines. It had never happened before. He used to create whole scenes on the spot. He was now questioning each take. Late at night, he would call the director and inquire, "Do I suck? What's happening?" He finished most days crying in her arm, according to his makeup artist. So far, nothing made sense. Nobody had a name. His brain was already being attacked for what was going on. Later, Susan, his wife, would learn that he had Lewy body dementia. Nobody at the time knew why Robin, the comedian with the fastest mind, was now having trouble thinking or speaking. It was even gloomier at home. He had trouble falling asleep. He experienced horrible nightmares. To protect his wife, he began sleeping in a separate room because he would yell, beat, or act out dreams. He occasionally locked himself in his stepson's room to prevent unintentional harm to others. There was more to this than sleeplessness. One of the most obvious symptoms of Lewy body dementia was REM sleep behavior disorder, which he exhibited. His days were marred by the horrible nights. His thoughts turned into a tangle. He experienced scary bouts of paranoia and panic episodes. Once, for safety, he drove his pricey timepieces to a friend's house while wearing them in socks. People were in danger, he thought. He believed someone was following his companions. These paranoid episodes occasionally persisted for 48 hours. He was unable to get away. Even worse, he was aware that something was off. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease by medical professionals in May 2014. However, that was not the whole explanation. He was more than just shaking. He was having panic attacks, having hallucinations, and forgetting basic things. "Do I have schizophrenia?" he asked his physicians repeatedly. "Is Alzheimer's affecting me?" "No," they said. However, he was aware that something was lacking. He sensed it. It was like playing whack-a-mole, according to his wife. As soon as they had one symptom under control, another one appeared. The primary Parkinson's medication, levodopa, hardly made a difference. It even exacerbated his hallucinations in certain instances. A hint: Parkinson's medications don't work effectively for those with Lewy body dementia. Rather than becoming better, Robin went worse. More terror, more bewilderment, more panic. Susan watched as her beloved lover vanished. He was clear on some days and frozen on others. Terrified, he shouted in his sleep at night. He would occasionally remain still during the day, caught in his own thoughts. Tragically, he was correct when he repeatedly asked whether he was losing it. He displayed more than 40 Lewy body dementia signs, but nobody was able to make the connection in time. He had confusion, delusions, hallucinations, and memory loss. It was all in waves. He was all right for a moment. The following one was gone. Doctors later described his situation as one of the worst they had ever seen, since it was so severe. Lewy bodies destroyed almost every portion of his brain. The nervous system is destroyed by clusters of aberrant proteins. Robin Williams wasn't only depressed or worn out, he was battling an incomprehensible neurological illness, a sickness that robbed him of his memory, his self-esteem, and ultimately his will to live. He was discovered dead at his Tiburon, California, home on August 11, 2014. He had used a belt to hang himself. His wrist had minor cuts, and there was a pocket knife close by. He was discovered by his personal helper. He was 63. The world lost one of its brightest stars when Robin Williams passed away in 2014, but beyond the humor, charm and sharp wit, a much darker force had been gnawing at him. His last year was a mystery. Confusion, anxiety, sleeplessness, hallucinations, paranoia, and unexpected mobility issues. Even the leading experts he consulted were unable to solve it. Initially, they mislabeled it Parkinson's disease. The autopsy followed. Even the most experienced professionals were taken aback by what they discovered. Lewy bodies, clumps of a deadly protein they're called alpha-synuclein, totally took over Robin's brain. These were found everywhere, not just in one place. His brainstem, limbic system, neocortex, and even the amygdala, which regulates emotion and memory. Almost no healthy neurons remained intact, as if his brain had been ravaged by a wildfire. Leading UCSF neurologist Dr. Bruce Miller examined the results. He responded bluntly. He wasn't kidding when he said that every part of his brain was affected. Areas of the brain that typically do not sustain damage in Robin's instance, neurodegenerative disorders were totally overpowered. Dr. Miller later expressed his amazement that Robin was still able to walk or even communicate in his last days due to the extent of the injury. Devastation of this magnitude is quite uncommon. According to medical professionals, it was one of the worst cases of Lewy body dementia ever documented. And that clarified everything. The sudden physical decline, the mood swings, the paranoia, and the hallucinations. He wasn't only ill. From the inside out, his brain was being methodically disassembled. The fact that the illness struck in all the wrong areas made it worse. This contains Lewy bodies and aids in emotion regulation. That resulted in terrible hallucinations and crippling anxiety. The stem of his brain, vital for mobility and fundamental processes, also infringed. This indicated that his body was unable to generate enough dopamine, which regulates movement. Parkinson's disease is caused by a drop in the same chemical. That's why he grew rigid and began to shake. But dopamine wasn't the only factor. Because the Lewy bodies reached his basal forebrain and cortex, they also reduced acetylcholine, another neurotransmitter essential for memory and focus. Because both substances were out of balance, Robin was in a mental tizzy, losing control, losing memory, and losing himself while hallucinating and immobilizing at the same time. The entire scene was terrifying. It wasn't just dementia that afflicted Robin Williams. He possessed a version of it that appeared to be designed to eliminate every aspect of his identity. Susan Schneider Williams, his widow, said it was verified by 4 different physicians. Among the worst cases they had ever encountered was this one. Too much damage had been done. Nothing could have prevented what was happening to him, not even medication, surgery, or therapy.